I know there's a lot of you struggling with crystal shards. It feels like once you corrupt everything, all you really use the rest of your shards for is putting it into your crystal armor. Other than that, you might make some divine pots, but I never felt like I had a big stack of divines. It always felt like I never had enough shards, so I just used regular pots, and I didn't want to go to Prif and do, the few activities I had to get a good amount of shards. That has changed. Shard output has increased drastically across the board, and the diverse options available for you to get shards has grown immensely. Not only do I feel like I'm going to have enough divine pots for a good amount of time, I feel like I could use it on other things. I'm excited to maybe get my crystal tool so I can have a crystal pickaxe. What I'm very excited for too is doing some enhanced crystal keys. I finally feel like I can make those without them going to waste. Not only that, we're going to talk a little bit about that chest later. Let's start with everyone's favorite place, the corrupted gauntlet. There's some really good news here, and it's not necessarily tied to the numbers going up. It is nice, the buff. You get about 2.5 more shards per hour than you did before. In an hour, you should expect between 50 and 65 shards around that. Before, you would have got about 15 less per hour than that. Over the course of 400 KC, going for your Bofa, you should get about 1,000 extra shards than you did prior. That's about half the cost of corrupting, which is a nice bonus. That being said, I think the best news here is that you'll be spending less time here. Not just because it's more shards, but because other options are made available to you that are very good or competitive to this. You will not feel obligated to use this because it's a good method. So rejoice in the fact that once you get your items, you're out of here. This is going to be a Slayer cave you're going to come to a lot more often. The shards here, when they used to drop, would drop 1 at a time from both regular and superiors. Now on average, the regulars are giving you 4 shards at a time and the superiors are giving you 8. That's huge increase. Tasks that you would do here before are typically Cuirass and Dark Beast, but now you might consider doing Bloodvelds and Necreals if you're not bursting, just because of the amount of shards you can get. You can also use a cannon as well for some extra damage. In terms of what you can expect from an average task of about 165, before you used to see about 8 shards on average, now you're going to see about 36 shards on average. On top of that, if these were extended tasks, before you used to see about 11, now you're going to see about 50 shards in a single task. Of course, Dark Beasts have got a little bit less in the task, so you're not going to see as much, but those are your average for Necreals and Cuirasks and Bloodvelds. I have a Cuirass task of 160. I'm going to do it and we're going to see how many shards we can get. Okay, so we finished a Cuirass task. I end up with 29 shards, which is under the average, but I hit the table with 1 superior included 7 times, which before would have been 7 shards. So we got 22 more shards. Reason why I have 39 here is because I came to the elves and I've gotten 2 drops so far of crystal shards off task. I wanted to show off these elves and I want to show off the moss giants really quickly. The elves do drop the enhanced teleport seed and you could get it here, and on the rate to getting it, which is about 1 in 1,000, you'll end up with about 170 bonus shards. That being said, thieving is significantly quicker, and thieving also gives you 2 teleport seeds, which you could break down 1 for 150 shards, which is practically what you're going to get here, plus you thieve some shards along the way. So this definitely likely isn't worth it for most people. You have moss giants here. If you're farming Bryophytic keys for whatever reason, maybe you want to get the staff on the log or for the master stash or whatever the case is, this is an option as well where you can get some passive shards. Again, you don't have to be on task either for that. But obviously being on task is good for multiple reasons. Woodcutting has had its rates change from 1 in 80 to 1 in 40. This means you're getting double the amount of shards you were getting before. This was already my favorite spot to do woodcutting, particularly because I could make planks, but now this is even more attractive. You have a couple of options on top of making mahogany or teak planks. That is use and magics. Magics in particular can be good because of forestry if you have a lot of people there. What you can do with your logs is you can drop them for the quickest XP, or you can bank a couple of inventories with the forestry basket. But of course, my personal favorite here, make the planks, put them in the sack, and get another inventory before banking. And that's 1 hour of cutting teaks where I was dropping the logs on the ground directly. I was able to get 1,040 logs, which puts me on rate for 26 shards, and I got 27. So overall, you'd expect about 26 shards per hour here. Previously, you would have gotten 13. Any other method like making planks or banking is going to slow that down, and of course, stuff like magic trees take longer, so take that into account. Mining is a little less straightforward than wood cutting. The rate has changed from 1 in 27 to 1 in 65, so about double as often. On top of that, stuff like Varrock's armor and a charged celestial signet, the extra ore you're getting does count towards that as well, so it's not really going to be a 1 in 65, it's going to be a little bit more common than that. In here, there's a couple of main options you're going to consider. First, you got the soft clay rocks. This is good if you need to build up soft clay, say if you're an Iron Man. In addition to that, these bracelets here, the way they work here is you get an extra ore for the charges on here. So if I mine this, I should get at least 2. I got 3 because I had a Varrock armor or something proc as well. So we're thinking about a 1 in 65. If we're getting 3 here, it's more like a 1 in 20. So I'm going to test this and we're going to see how quickly we can get some shards. There's also a deposit box nearby here, so I'm just going to deposit these because I'm an Iron Man, yay. We just did 20 minutes of soft clay. I got almost 1100 soft clay. In that, we got 15 crystal shards. So if we do the rate there, it's about a 1 in 70 something. So I went a little bit dry, but overall, 15 shards in 20 minutes is pretty good. I would say if you're using bracelets of clay for the entire method with bank and everything, you could probably get about 40 to 50 shards an hour doing this, which is not bad overall if you got to stack up on some soft clay. The next thing is iron here, power mining iron specifically. Right now, I would say the meta of what you should do is go to the mining guild to get your unidentified minerals and get your gloves first, because these gloves are amazing. It makes power mining very easy. You could kind of just chill here and hit the rock, I believe, 4 times before it depletes. So that's really helpful. Once you get the gloves, this is a really good spot. You can see I already got a shard. Overall, you could probably get a good amount of shards here. We'll do some measurements to see exactly what we can get. And then the other thing here, if you're too lazy to bank, or to drop, you can just use the bank here and bank it. We got 10 shards in 20 minutes. Overall, it looks like I went a little bit dry technically. I did the math and it looks like based on this, you'll get about 35 shards an hour. What makes this extremely powerful is it's really, really chill with the expert mining gloves and banking. And on top of that, the best part, 80k mining XP an hour. To get 80k mining XP an hour plus 35 shards an hour is really competitive in my opinion. Soft clay is more per hour, but you're not getting any mining XP. Still really good if you got to get some soft clay, but overall this mining method really, really good. Compared to previously, it was about half the amount, so you would have gotten like something like 17 an hour. I think 35 an hour is a completely respectable amount, and I expect this to be a more popular option for people. Before we move on from mining, we have to talk about Zalcano. Zalcano was changed a few months ago in a couple of ways. First, you can choose if you want XP focus or if you want loot. I personally prefer loot, but I just tested XP and I was getting about 50k an hour in a mass world. The bigger change is that you can 1-down Zalcano now. Before you were forced to 3-downer. This means you get way more shards because you're getting way more kills. I just did 30 minutes and I got 55 shards, so that's about 110 shards an hour. Overall, I'm pretty high leveled and I didn't bank or anything like that, so I'd say generally you could probably get between 80 and 120 shards per hour. So if we compare that to iron, at least XP and shard wise, we have about 50k an hour and 110 shards versus the iron being 80k an hour and 35 shards an hour. That being said, you can't really compare them beyond that. The iron was significantly more chill. I actually enjoyed it more. Mass Zalcano's rather frustrating overall, but I do want to just kind of draw that comparison. Overall, I'd say generally you probably want to do the loot option at Zalcano, and there's probably options in smaller groups that could be definitely more optimal. The Prif agility course has been changed as well. The shortcuts that you find on the course, they had a 1 in 3 chance of giving you a shard when you went through them. If you go in them now, you can see here, we get a shard no matter what. That means we're essentially getting 3 times as many shards, which is a huge buff. Overall, in order to determine how many shards you're going to make, you just have to know how many laps per hour you can do. In this case, I'm at a pace of 48 laps per hour, so I'm getting 48 shards per hour. I'd say generally with failed obstacles, you might get less than that. You might get closer to maybe 45. And maybe if you're more efficient than me or you get lucky with the portals, you might get closer to 50. 45 to 50 shards an hour, getting about 60k per hour agility XP is a pretty good option if you're looking to gain some agility levels. I think one of the most interesting things about this update is the fact that the best method, Pickpocketing Elves, is still the best method by a long shot. You get about 150 shards per hour, upwards of 200, and that's way more than anything else that we've gotten. That being said, if I'm going to spend my time pickpocketing, which I absolutely do not like, I'd rather have it be virus because I'd rather have blood shards since those are much harder to get. Now that I have different options in Prif to get different shards, it's less important for me to pickpocket, and I don't think I'll do it unless I absolutely need to. Perhaps my favorite impling in the game, the Crystal Impling. I love bank standing in Prif and buying runes in Prif because once in a while I'll find an impling, pick it up and get some loot. Now I want to do that even more. The crystal shards have been buffed on the table. They're pretty good now. Before you used to get about half a shard on average. Now you're getting about 2 shards on average. It's not a huge amount of shards, of course, but something else to consider is that the Acorn is also still on the table. That Acorn is now doubled the amount of shards you will eventually get. So overall, before you used to get about 1 1/4 shards shard per impling. Now you're getting about 3.5 shards per impling if you actually farm those acorns. And for those of you who want to actively farm this versus passively, let's say on the high end you were able to get 15 to 20 implings per hour. That should net you about 55 to 70 or so shards in that hour. Keep in mind, some of that's going to be acorn that you'll need to plant. Have you been stacking your crystal acorns for this update? Because I haven't. Now when you plant them, you're going to get an average yield of 30 crystal shards. Before you used to get an average yield of, I believe, 15. So you've doubled your output. Just make sure you're using ultra compost on it. That being said, it always felt like acorns were in short supply. It's a 1 in 18 from a crystal impling, so I didn't feel like I was getting it too often. I would pretty much get it once in a while, plant it, and call it a day. That being said, you might be getting more of these now, and I have a feeling I'm going to be planting a lot more myself. That's happening because of the Elven Crystal Chest has been updated in many ways. We're going to go into detail, but essentially now it's giving you a lot more acorns and a lot more shards. With all these diverse methods of acquiring shards, I finally have a way to keep my crystal armor charged. I can make a stack of divines, and now I can create some enhanced crystal keys to get some dragonstone armor. Now, you might be thinking that this is probably still a waste of money, and you'd actually be surprised by what I'm about to say. There are two changes with this chest. One of them is really big. The first one is the fact that crystal shards, you get about 50% more now. That's all well and good, but if you remember previously, I mentioned that crystal acorns give you double the amount of crystal shards. Now you might be thinking, okay, well we get double the amount of crystal shards from the chest now when we get an acorn. Not quite. Before you used to get on average when you got the acorn about 1.5 acorns. Now you're getting an average of 5 acorns. If you factor in that you're getting 5 acorns and the fact that they've doubled in loot, just getting a drop is worth about 150 shards once you farm those acorns. Now, obviously you're not going to get that drop all the time, so we got to work with averages, factoring in both the acorns and the 50% buff to shards. An enhanced key costs you 10 crystal shards to make. Previously, with all that combined, you get about 3.4 shards back per key, meaning each key costs you 6.6 shards. Now, you'll be getting 8.3 shards back per key, meaning it's costing you only 1.7 shards per key to open a chest. That's more than an 80% rebate on your shards, provided you take the time to plant the acorns. This means, let's say for example, you were to do Zalcano and get 100 shards in an hour, you could turn that into close to 60 key openings long term. This is good for both iron cloggers and main cloggers. Irons can reasonably open the chest and go for dragonstone pieces now, provided they do some Prif content, and mains only have to spend something like 5 to 10k per key, and if the enhanced teleport ever drops in price, which is where you get shards from, they probably get close to break even. On top of all this, you do get some nice crafting and smithing XP, so I have 27 keys here, for example. If we were to make them, we could see we got 27k, so we get 500 in smithing and 500 in crafting, which is really nice bonus really quickly. For example, if you were to use those 60 key opens I mentioned earlier, that would be 30k of each. I have opened this chest once, as you can see here, so we're going to use these 27 keys. Let's see what we get. No way. 1 in 500, we just got Dragonstone boots on 21! Dude, that's insane. Now it's only going to get harder to get, but dude, yes. Here is our loot. Obviously, the big thing is the Dragonstone boots, so it makes it worth it 100% right there. We got 5 crystal keys back, which is actually a lot. Not a lot of runes, etc. The big thing here is almost 200 shards. Remember, this cost me 270 shards. I'm not even at the drop yet to hit the acorns, but assuming I hit them soon, I'm actually pretty positive on shards. So this is pretty addicting. I need to grind more shards and do more of this. This update was long overdue, but boy was it worth it. It's not that things give really high shards per hour necessarily, it's the fact that there's so many diverse options to choose from. So when you're training your account or you're going for certain items, you're going to get a good amount of shards. That means I can actually afford to make divine pots pretty liberally, and on top of that I can even open the Elven Crystal Chest from time to time.